A walk down a 1970s British high street. Take a stroll down a British high street in the 1970s, and you'll instantly feel a sense of belonging. It's a world of striped shop awnings, clinking coins, and the scent of freshly baked bread drifting past the butcher's shop. Before online shopping and out-of-town retail parks, every British town had its own heartbeat, a row of small shops where everyone knew each other. A walk down a 1970s British high street captures that moment in time when life felt slower, friendlier, and proudly local, a true picture of 1970s Britain. The corner grocer and the familiar faces. In 1970s Britain, the local grocer wasn't just a business, it was part of the family routine. Stores like Fine Fare, Lipton's, and Safeway were growing, but many streets still had small family-run shops. The owner often knew your name and remembered your usual order. There were no plastic trolleys beeping at self-checkouts, just wooden shelves stacked with tinned peaches, OXO cubes, and loose fruit weighed carefully on metal scales. Prices were penciled on brown paper bags, and the till gave a cheerful ding with every sale. Shopping was social. You'd chat about the weather, exchange recipes, or hear who had just bought a new Mini. These shops weren't about convenience. They were about connection. That simple exchange of greetings across a counter summed up the warmth of the 1970s British high street. Bakers, butchers, and the art of community. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air long before you reached the bakery. Local names like Hovey's and Mother's Pride dominated British shelves, but independent bakers still ruled the neighborhood. Many baked through the early hours so that by sunrise, the shelves were lined with crusty loaves, iced buns, and sausage rolls still warm to the touch. Next door, the butcher sharpened his knife on a steel rod, calling out cheerful hellos to customers queuing outside. He'd slice your bacon by hand, wrap it in wax paper, and often throw in a bit of friendly gossip. Kids pressed their noses against the counter to watch, a free show that smelled of sawdust and spice. The baker and butcher were anchors of the 1970s British high street. They represented a Britain built on trust, quality, and a dash of humor, long before pre-packed everything took over. Woolworths, the treasure chest of the high street. Few names bring back memories of 1970s Britain like Woolworths, or Woolies, as everyone affectionately called it. Its red and cream signage glowed proudly on almost every British high street. Inside, the possibilities felt endless. School stationery, Christmas decorations, kitchenware, and of course, the beloved pick-and-mix sweets. Children lined up at the sweet counter, their noses pressed to glass jars filled with fruit jellies, sherbet lemons, and flying saucers. With just a few pence, they could fill a little paper bag with joy. Parents browsed aisles of records and budget homewares while chatting to friendly assistants in neat red aprons. Woolworths captured what was special about life in 1970s Britain. Affordable, cheerful, and family-oriented. Whether you were buying a single from ABBA or a frying pan for Sunday breakfast, Woolies always had what you didn't know you needed until you saw it. Record shops and the soundtrack of the 70s. The 1970s were a golden age for British music, and the record shop was its temple. Stores like HMV and Our Price stood proudly beside independent record dealers. Posters of David Bowie, Fleetwood Mac, and The Clash plastered the windows, and teenagers crowded inside to browse the newest vinyls. Inside, it was a sensory experience. The faint smell of cardboard sleeves, the crackle of needle on vinyl, and the murmur of kids debating who was better, Queen or T-Rex. Headphones dangled from listening booths, allowing fans to sample a song before spending their hard-earned pocket money. Music in 1970s Britain wasn't streamed, it was treasured. Every purchase felt like a personal victory. Record shops were gathering points for local youth, places that celebrated creativity, independence, and discovery. They were noisy, cluttered, and alive. just like the decade itself. Fashion windows and hair salons, full of life. If you looked into the fashion windows of the 1970s British High Street, you'd see a world drenched in color and personality. Chelsea Girl was the go-to boutique for young women chasing London's latest looks, while C&A offered affordable fashion for the whole family. Mannequins in flared trousers, paisley shirts, and platform shoes stood tall in front of mirrors, reflecting Britain's new confidence. Young people finally had their own style, one influenced by music, television, and rebellion. Just a few doors down, the hair salon buzzed with life. Unisex salons like Peter's Hair Studio offered the latest shag cuts or feathered styles inspired by Farrah Fawcett and Rod Stewart. The sound of hairdryers mixed with chatter and laughter. People came not just for a trim, but for community, to talk, to laugh, to be seen. Fashion in the 1970s was unapologetically expressive, and the high street was its catwalk. Pubs, newsagents, and the evening glow. As the sun dipped behind the rooftops, the high street took on a different rhythm. Neon lights flickered, pub signs creaked gently in the breeze, and the laughter of regulars filled the air. The Red Lion, the Crown, or the King's Arms, every town had at least one. Inside, cigarette smoke curled toward the ceiling as darts hit the board, and jukeboxes played the Rolling Stones or Slade. A pint of bitter cost less than 20 pence in the early 70s, and a packet of crisps was a perfect companion. The pub was the living room of the 1970s British High Street, where life stories unfolded one pint at a time. Next door, the newsagent was closing for the night. The scent of newspapers and ink filled the air. The Daily Mirror, The Sun, and Daily Express dominated the shelves, while comics like the Beano and Dandy waited for eager young hands. Adults picked up cigarettes, Players or Embassy, and children spent their last coins on penny chews. Every element of that evening scene, the pubs, the papers, the laughter, painted an unforgettable portrait of life in 1970s Britain. Charity shops, post offices, and everyday life. By the mid-1970s, charity shops had become part of the high street landscape. Oxfam, Save the Children, and the British Red Cross offered second-hand clothes, records, and books, long before vintage became fashionable. These shops gave unwanted things a new story and helped good causes along the way. Meanwhile, the post office stood as the steady heart of the community. It was where you paid bills, collected pensions, and sent postcards to relatives in the seaside town. Clerks stamped letters by hand and smiled as they handed you your change. Banks sat nearby, with tellers who greeted you by name. ATMs had only just begun appearing in Britain, so most people still queued to withdraw cash from real people, not machines. It was slow, but it was human. This slower pace defined 1970s British life. Errands weren't just chores, they were interactions that gave each day rhythm and meaning. A street full of sights, sounds, and souls. To walk down a 1970s British high street was to experience all five senses at once. You'd hear the click of a pram wheel on pavement, the clang of the milk float in the distance, and the cheerful chatter of shopkeepers greeting regulars. The air was filled with the aroma of baked goods, petrol from passing cars, and the faint sweetness of tobacco. Each shop had its own soundtrack, from the hum of a hairdryer to the scratch of a record needle. Shop windows were colorful displays of everything British life had to offer: honesty, humor, and heart. Even in the industrial towns of Yorkshire or the quiet corners of Cornwall, the high street was the stage where community life played out daily. The sense of pride people felt for their local shops was profound. These were more than businesses. They were the glue that held towns together. A walk down a 1970s British high street was a walk through friendship, routine, and belonging. Every shopkeeper had a story. Every coin mattered, and every smile was genuine. Though many of those storefronts have vanished, their spirit endures. A timeless reminder of when Britain's heart truly beat on the high street. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.